never gotta sweet that. You can bet that, never gotta sweet that.
I'll be the rubber band, you'll be the match. I won't be a few. Boom, painter, baby, you can be the mute. I'm the reporter, baby, you can be the news. You're the cigarette, and I'm the smoker. We raise the bet, if you're the joker.
Chit chat with cutie, that's what they said, yep.
Chit chat with QT was killing.
Chit chat with QT for all of this tea.
Hey cuties, thank you guys so much for joining me for another video. While you're here, please make sure to like the video, hit that notification bell, and subscribe. Let's go ahead and get into my recap of Love and Marriage Huntsville Season 6, Episode 9, Ready to Pop Off. So the episode starts off with Tisha and Marsau. Tisha is packing for them to move into an apartment. Tisha said they realize that it's going to be another 2 to 3 years before they move to Bedrock. You know, we're calling the land with all the rocks and caves Bedrocks. So yeah, they're saying now that it's going to be at least 2 to 3 years out. And because of that, they decided to move into an apartment so they can renovate their current home. Then they plan to move back into their current home while they wait for their new home to be built. And woo, that was a tongue twister. And it really doesn't make sense to me. Unless their current home was falling down around them, why bother? And why not move and rent another home, if so? But an apartment? And look, we all know that the rumors have been going around with all of these alleged liens and lawsuits and all of that. And I just think that that could be the reason for their move. That's just my opinion. But whatever, let's go ahead and get into their conversation that Marsau's gossiping nurse said about what happened with Tiffany and Sheree's conversation that had not a damn thing to do with him. And before I get into that, it just really amazes me how giddy and overjoyed Tisha and Marsau seems to get when they are talking about other folks' business. But we know for the most part, they're silent when it comes to their real business. But anyway, Marsau tells Tisha that he thought Tiffany was smart and witty, but she may not have it all. And I was just looking at Marsau like, do you realize who you're talking to about someone else being smart? Because a lot of people feel like your wife is not smart, sir. But Tisha says, what do you mean that she doesn't have sense? Child, let me move on. But then Mr. Marsau gets into why he somewhat was involved. He said that he and Martell were at Black because he's helping Martell study for this builder's license. And Tiffany walked in because her and Martell had some business to discuss about Selma. And he stated Martell was upset. And let me say real quick, since I didn't drop my recap from last week, Martell was out of line, in my opinion, when he confronted Tiffany, because he should not have done so without at least Tiffany's husband, Lou, being there. If he wanted to say something directly to Tiffany, yeah, Big Lou should have been there. Just my opinion. And I also think that it was a women's business. Tiffany talked to Sheree. Sheree said what she had to say back to Tiffany. Other than that, for these two men to confront her was out of line. And Marsau's ass definitely should not have said a damn thing, because it didn't have a damn thing to do with him. But anyway, he's acting so confused while he's recapping this to Tisha. And he said the word cheater shouldn't come out of certain people's mouth. Tisha then said, especially if she cheated on her first husband. And just look, guys, look at this picture that I just put up of Tisha. Look at the joy on her face. She is ecstatic to be gossiping with her husband. And maybe it's me, but that just does not happen with a lot of men that I know. They're just not going to sit around and gossip like this. But let me just say this also real quick. Tisha, that makeup is too light and that hair is too light. And your makeup artist should never, ever mix the two again. It wasn't flattering to me at all. They had Tisha looking like she was one of the Wayans brothers from the movie White Chicks. No, just no. And you guys know I've said that Tisha is a pretty girl to me, but I think that they need to stop trying to change her real complexion because, yeah, it's not looking good. But back to the scene. Then Marsau's messy arse said that he thinks Tiffany is trying to date a cheater. Now, why would Marsau say that? That woman is good and pregnant and ready to pop. And here goes Marsau and Tisha putting this out in the atmosphere, which will have folks questioning if Big Lou is the pappy. That's low down to me. And then Tisha had the nerve to say in her confessional that Tiffany knows how to overstep her boundaries. And you know what, Tisha? Just like your husband, he overstepped his boundaries by involving himself in something that has nothing to do with him. And then Marsau then says that Tiffany is a habitual line stepper. Tisha then goes on to say that she feels like Tiffany has a slick tongue. Marsau then says, if you have a slick tongue and wants to be messy then. Well, duh. Isn't that what Tiffany is doing? Being messy? And for me, it is fun shade. It is fun mess. It's not dark and messy like we've seen Tisha and Marsau do right here on this show. They then cut to Tiffany arriving home, and she walks up to Big Lou and she tells him about meeting up with Martell and how Marsau and Martell ganged up on her. She said that they came at her with everything but what she went to talk about. She said Martell must have felt some type of way about the conversation she and Sheree had as two women, and it was not supposed to be her versus two men. Lou said, hold on, two guys came at you about a conversation you had with a woman? Yes, they did, Big Lou. Yes, they did. Then Tiffany tells him that she asked Sheree about dating a cheater. And Lou looked a little shocked and surprised, and he said, you asked her that? Tiffany said, I did. I cheated before, you cheated before, and how does it feel for you? Now, Tiffany, come on now, just own it. You know that you asked her that to be messy, and I, for one, loved it. But we have to admit, that's really not normal to say, how does it feel to date a cheater? But Tiffany then says that Martell said Sheree was mad, and Tiffany said she didn't look mad to me. Louis said, yeah, she really didn't look mad the rest of the evening, and she really wasn't mad. Let's just keep it real. Sheree don't give a damn. This is a storyline and a paycheck for Sheree. But Lewis did end up agreeing with Tiffany, and he said if Sheree felt some type of way, she would have said something. Tiffany says she's very opinionated and she asks the tough questions. And thank you, Tiffany, for asking these questions, because what else would we be talking about had she not? Tiffany has been carrying this whole season thus far to me. But they then go back and cut to Marsau and Tisha continuing their conversation. And Marsau tells Tisha the exact words that Tiffany said to Sheree, which was, does she think her P was good enough to keep Martell? And I'll be honest again, that's not something I would ask someone. I mean, what was Sheree, or any other woman for that matter, what would their answer be? No, I don't think my P is good enough. But Tisha and Marsau got a kick out of it. Tisha said, she said the P word. Marsau said, yeah, to a grown woman. Tisha said she didn't say vagina. And then she says Tiffany is tough. Marsau said that he told Tiffany, you don't say those words out loud to another human. Tisha said she would have cussed Tiffany out. And I can agree with Tisha again on that point. I probably would have cussed Tiffany out as well. I meaning a woman, not Marsau being a man. And since Sheree didn't, let's be clear, we know that shit with her and Martell is again a storyline. I do think that they've done the do in the bedroom, but obviously it's not that deep. Literally, with what we've seen Martell is working with. But anyway, Marsau said in his mind, he was wondering, how did this happen? He said Tiffany looked him dead in his soul and said, it's because I like blended families. Now, Marsau, I would have looked you dead in your soul and told you to mind your damn business. That this is an A and B conversation and you see your ass on out of it. That's just me. But look how excited Marsau is right here. Look at him. But Tisha says, what does that have to do with blended families? And once again, I agree. Not a damn thing. Blended families and how you popping your cooch just does not make sense. Tisha says that's the thing about Tiffany. She'll say something and try to backtrack. Marsau says, on who? A dummy? And I'm going to say again, Mr. Marsau, you're doing a little bit too much and saying a little bit too much about another man's wife. Marsau says Tiffany tries to make it seem like she's innocent and don't see what she's done. Marsau then says that Martell asked Tiffany, what if I were to ask you about all of your sex partners in life? And then Mr. Marsau shades the hell out of Tiffany again and said, you may want to narrow that down in the last year. And I thought, really? Again? Marsau and Tisha is putting it out here that Tiffany is, was, or currently cheating. But Tisha tells him, well, she has been married for 2 years and don't be disrespectful. And I'm sorry, Tisha, you put it out there when you were in the car with Kiki as well. So both of you and your husband, is disrespectful to even put this out here. And we all know Tisha did the same damn thing when it comes to the details of Mel and Martell way back in season 1. But Marsau says, I'm not disrespectful. And Tisha says, to her marriage, you are. And he definitely is. And I'm just tripping out at this point because Tisha's ass have complained about folks talking about her marriage And look at her and Marsau doing the same damn thing. But Marsau says if a woman asks someone how good their pee is, then they deserve to get questioned. Not by your ass, Marsau. Then he says he asked Tiffany if she identifies as a Karen. And he mimicked Tiffany by saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Is it because I'm white? And he said, no, it's because you're a Karen. He said he's not talking about the white side. He's talking about the Karen side. He then goes on to say that Tiffany says she learned a lot from Sheree. And he says, shut up. And he said one thing Tiffany did learn was that Sheree wasn't quick to knock someone out. So now you talking about a woman possibly knocking out a pregnant woman. I cannot. And then they show Tisha and Marsau in their confessional. And I'm sorry, this showed me how insecure Tisha is. She said Tiffany is trying to play innocent after saying something slick, and she thinks she can get away with it because she's a pretty girl. What? What does Tiffany's mouth have to do with her looks? I'm confused. Is Tisha jealous of Tiffany being pretty? Because again, I just don't understand her saying that. But Tisha said the prettiness is getting to Tiffany. No, ma'am. Tiffany's prettiness is getting to your ass, Tisha, because again, her mouth does not have anything to do with her looks. No matter how she looked, if she says something slick out of her mouth, that's just what it is. Marsau takes a low blow again and says she's not that pretty to say nonsense like that. He said to say the stuff that she says, she has to be a whole dime or a quarter. And I'm sorry, Big Lou, I'm going to need you to address this Negro about this at the reunion, because I'm sure you won't have a chance to see what's really being said until after the season is over. This Negro is basically calling Big Lou's wife ugly and a cheater. Where they do that at? But they then cut back to Tiffany and Big Lou. She tells him his friend Marsau called her a Karen. Louis said, what? Tiffany says he also asked her what the hell is wrong with her. And Louis looked pissed. And he said he actually showed attitude towards you. Tiffany says yes, and you need to talk to your friends. Louis says, oh, he will, and Martell should have called him if he had an issue. And he was pissed that Marsau was involved at all. He said, why would it take two men to come at a woman about a conversation that the woman had with another woman? And he said their conversation with Tiffany had nothing to do with business. Tiffany then says, yeah, well, after the fact, Marsau did say, why are we having this conversation with her and we should talk to her husband? After they had this conversation with her, he now wants to act like, oh, we should have talked to Big Lou. Man, go ahead on with that BS. And Tiffany said, yeah. She said, go F yourself. And then Big Lou said, as many times as he's come to me saying who the hell I think I am, who the hell you think you are going to my wife like that? And I totally agree, because we all remember the exchange with Marsau and Louis in previous seasons. But they then showed Louis and Tiffany in their confessional. Big Lou says he's basically a peaceful person, but he don't play about his family and especially his wife. He said he don't appreciate the two individuals coming and attacking her over something minute, and that's an issue for him. Tiffany smiles at her husband and says she loves a protector. And I know that's right, Tiffany. He better step for his wife, period. But Lou tells Tiffany they gonna get it all and he will not be backing off. He said, mother effers gonna get all this shit. He said, since he want it, he gonna feel it. They then cut back to Marsau telling Tisha that he told Martell this is a combo that we should have had with Lewis. And all I could do is roll my eyes because whose face are you playing in other than Tisha's? You knew when you were having that conversation with Tiffany that you shouldn't have been. You and Martell both. So like Tiffany said, don't wait until after to say, oh, maybe we should have talked to Big Lou. But Tisha then wonders how things will be because Tiffany's baby shower is coming up and she said it's going to be interesting. Marsau says yes, it's gossip and it's messy and he wants to skip the baby shower meatballs and he wants popcorn. Just a hot ass mess, guys, if you ask me. Marsau and Tisha got too much joy bringing down a marriage. Or as Tisha says, a marriage. Because they threw a whole lot of insinuations out there in their convo. And yeah, Big Lou and Tiffany need to check them about that shit. This next scene is Kimmy and Maurice. They are taking a drive. She says she's on the last leg as far as her cancer treatment, and she's been cleared for radiation. She says she's anxious to see her hair grow back. She said her hair is a part of her beauty. Maurice says she's beautiful with or without hair. And Kimmy lets him know she appreciates him saying that. And she said a lot of her emotions and sexuality is in feeling pretty. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this scene because it did kind of make me just feel for Kimmy. Because I totally understand her still wanting to please her man. And that's what it was about. She basically said that her sex drive is down to nothing. She even admitted that sometimes when they're doing the do, that she's faking it. And I'm sure it's hard going through what she's going through. And like I said, still trying to take care of business. So her husband, most likely this is how she's feeling. So her husband does not have a wandering eye and step out. For me, I just wish that women didn't have to worry about things like that, especially in a time like this. I already voiced my opinion a couple weeks ago when she was going back and forth as far as Monster doing his chores and all of that. And I just think that at this time, she should have been somewhere sitting with her legs kicked up after her appointments and doing nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. That's chores, that's cooking, and that's sex if she's not feeling 100%. So I'm not saying that Maurice is pressuring her in any way. We do know, and they did mention in this scene of how he really wanted it all day, every day before this happened when it comes to cancer. But I just hate that this is something that she has to worry about at this time. But Kimmy says it's been very tough. Maurice said, well, I just feel like if you're initiating it, you still want it. And Kimmy asked him, well, how many times have I initiated it since July? Which is when she found out about this. And he said 50%. And Kimmy looked shocked. And she said she has not. But Maurice then says, normally when Kimmy scoots back on me and throw her legs over him, that means that she's good to go and ready to do the do. He said, and now that most likely means that she wants to be close and cuddle. And Kimmy agreed and says, yeah, it means I want to be close and cuddle. And then Maurice says, well, I just don't want it to be an only me thing. And Kimmy says, yeah, it's been only you. And he says, so you've been faking it? And she said, yes. So again, it was a well-needed conversation, for them to show this to the world. But for me personally, I just hate that she has to even keep this on the top of her mind while she's dealing with something so challenging. Maurice will be okay without sex for a couple months. He should. Maurice, go lock yourself up in a room somewhere and do what you gotta do. Put on a little X-rated tape and pleasure yourself. Let your wife focus on what she's going through. And again, I'm not blaming him because he does not seem to be that bothered, but I get why Kimmy is feeling this way because he has made it a point to say how much sex is important to him, how he wants it 2, 3, 4 times a day. And I see fear when I see Kimmy talking about this, and hopefully, they've gotten through that hump, and hopefully it's just not an issue any longer. And then this next scene was Kimmy meeting up with one of her friends named Andrea, and it was basically the same conversation that she had with Maurice. So she was explaining to her friend that her sex drive is completely gone. And again, I see fear when I see Kimmy voicing her concerns about this. She told her friend that she knows her husband's expectations and she's really not meeting them at this time. So not too much on this scene. It was a cute girlfriends meetup. And as I just stated, hopefully that Kimmy is over this hump. And if she isn't, if she still has a low sex drive, hopefully Maurice is okay with it. Now, child, let's go ahead and get into this messy arse baby shower. Tiffany looked beautiful. She was excited to have everyone there. All of the couples arrived. Maurice then asked Tisha, "Where's Marsau?" And she said she's not sure if he's going to make it. She says he's sort of not feeling Tiffany right now. Now, she didn't say why he wasn't feeling Tiffany. And it's because that Negro inserted himself in some shit that had nothing to do with him. And he's not feeling Tiffany. But anyway, Stormy sits down. Tiffany asks Nell how Mel feels about them dating other people. Tisha, girl, ask Mel. Nell really wouldn't know. And anybody else saying how she would feel is hearsay. But Nell said she's all for it as far as Martell dating. And that Mel is just not really ready to meet any of them. Next thing we know, Mel arrives. Her and Tiffany greet each other and hug each other. And they cut back to Tisha telling the table that Martell and Marsau kind of got into it with Tiffany. Stormy asks, was it a small or big tiff? And it was big, in my opinion. But Tisha goes on to say what was said about Tiffany asking Sheree, how does it feel to date a cheater? And is the pee popping? And yada, yada, yada. Next thing you know, Mel walks over to the table and she says her hellos and she takes a seat. And child, let me just say this, Nell Fletcher, you are really disappointing me. Because as soon as Mel sat down, Nell Fletcher says, are we going to have the conversation with Mel at the table? Tisha says, well, no, let's ask her to make sure it's good. And I do give Tisha credit for that because we know that it's really inappropriate to talk about what an ex is doing with his ex-wife, period. Who cares? Now, what I didn't care for and what they should have said was, look, this is about Martell and Sheree's sex life. And I don't even think we should talk about this, especially to the ex-wife. And what's so weird to me is, why is a table full of men and women sitting back talking about this anyway? Like, seriously? But Tisha then goes on to say that they were talking about a situation that happened and they didn't want to make Mel feel uncomfortable by talking about it. Mel is sort of looking confused, and I'm sure She was not thinking that these grown MFers was sitting back talking about somebody's cooch. But Mel said, no, I'm good. Y'all ain't gonna make me feel uncomfortable talking about anything. Oh, yes, they are, Mel. Oh, yes, they are. And then Nell Fletcher said, well, did you hear about what Tiffany said to Sheree? And she proceeds to tell Mel that what Tiffany said was, does Sheree feel her pee was good enough to keep Martell? And just sitting back and looking at Mel, I'm just looking at her because it's like things were registering in her head. Like, oh, okay, I see what y'all trying to do. And guess what Mel did? She got up and chucked their asses the deuces and walked away to go get her some food. Like I said a couple minutes ago, Nell Fletcher, I am really, really disappointed in you because you know damn well you wouldn't want to discuss that. Now, we've heard of alleged rumors of infidelity in your marriage, and imagine divorcing your husband because of that, and then you sitting down talking about whose pee is popping. Are you serious? Is it that serious to be on a reality show? Because we all thought, I know I did, that Nell had a different type of relationship with Mel, but after this episode, I don't know. That was tacky as hell. But they cut to Mel in her confessional, and she says she's not sure why her presence summons deep conversations. But, however, as soon as she sits down, here they go. Here they go. And that's why she said she stays to herself. And I don't blame her. I really don't. And it's looking like, Mel, you may need to add Nell Fletcher right to that list, because I'm not sure what she was on in this episode. But anyway, Mel sits down again to start eating her food, and she gets ambushed again. Stormy then asks if they heard the other part. And like I said, Mel ain't had a meatball of shit, nothing to nibble on. But Stormy says, you don't know Sheree? Mel says, I met her years ago. Stormy said it was alluded to that Mel or you was a fan. Stormy then goes on to say that Tiffany said Sheree said Mel drove down to her book signing and asked for a picture. And Mel shut that shit down quick. She said it was a hair festival and she was a speaker on the main stage. Not no stage over in the corner, nothing like that. On the main stage. And she stated that Sheree was there. Nell Fletcher then says that could have been the time. And Mel said that was the only time I met her. Nell said, so you don't have a problem with her? And Mel said, no. My issues don't lie with the people. My issue lies with one person. And we know she's talking about Martell's ass. And no sooner did she say that, guess who came walking in? The two women who confronted Tiffany. Oops, I'm sorry, the two men, Marsau and Martell. And I just want to say a side note real quick, how tacky of this for these people to go to Tiffany's baby shower and talk about all of this nonsense at this girl's baby shower. This couldn't wait, because the only thing that they are talking about is what the hell they've been talking about since this show started. Mel and Martell. But let me get back on track. Marsau and Martell walks over. Mel takes a glance at Martell, and that was her cue. She's up. Marsau said he needs a seat, and Mel said, you can have mine. He said, oh, you about to go? And I said out of my mouth, hell yeah, she up. But anyway, Mel says yes, she gets up and she leaves. And then let's go ahead and get into this talk of Martell, Big Lou, and Marsau. They all go outside to talk, and Lou let them know that he really didn't appreciate them going at Tiffany with the BS. Marsau looks shocked, and said, oh, she felt some type of way? And I'm so tired of Marsau, I swear. But Martell tried to clean it up, talking about, well, it was supposed to be about business, but since he saw Tiffany, he decided to go ahead and talk to her then. He said Marsau was already there, and that's how it happened. First of all, Martell, you ain't got no business. So I know that Tiffany and Martell is talking about, they were talking about Selma, but the only thing that we really saw Mr. Martell do in Selma was ride on the back of a pickup truck as another grand marshal. And I'm going to stand on saying he should have waited to speak with Tiffany in Big Lou's presence. But Louis then broke down what Tiffany said happened, and he mentioned how Tiffany said, they said, what the F were you thinking? Saying that. And here goes Messy Marsau trying to make a joke out of it. And he said, oh yeah, that was a reaction. Louis then says, okay, well, where did the Karen part come from? Marsau again, with his long-winded ass, tries to get intellectual like he always does, and he then breaks down the definition of a Karen. He said a Karen is a person who feels entitled to give unsolicited opinions to other people. Negro, that's you. That's what this whole damn episode is about, because that's exactly what you did to Tiffany. That situation only involved Tiffany, Sheree, and Martell. And who said more than Martell? Who gave more of their unsolicited opinions? It was you, Marsau. That's the pot straight up calling the kettle black. Because I'm sorry, if Tiffany stuck her nose in Martell and Sheree's business and she's a Karen, then Marsau sticking his nose in Martell and Sheree's business is a Karen. Period. Because I'm really confused. How is that story more about Marsau and what he said than Martell? But anyway, Lou then gives a little BS to try to clean up Tiffany's mess, acting like Tiffany was really thinking about how Martell feels about family and all of that. And come on, Lou, you my boy. I love the way you represented in this scene, but you know damn well what Tiffany said didn't have to do with anything as far as Mr. Martell being this so-called family man. I get it though. Protect your wife and her BS by any means necessary. But Lou says it really wasn't anything negative by asking how it feels dating a cheater. And before Martell can answer, here goes Marsau. Marsau says, stop. You know that don't make sense. And I hate to say it, guys, I had to agree with Marsau's ass in that moment. Because it don't. It really don't make sense. But Louis then says, look, I'm not trying to cover up for Tiff. Then they show Louis in his confessional, and he said he gets the fact of Martell feeling some type of way, and he gets that Tiffany said some things that may not have come off well to Sheree, but what does Marsau have to do with it? Thank you, Big Lou, thank you. Not a damn thing. And Louis said just that. He said it has nothing to do with Marsau and is pissing him off. It then cuts back to Lou outside asking Marsau if he's justifying what he did with his wife. And he tells Marsau next time something happens, he's going to go to his wife. Marsau had the nerve to say, "You not gonna go to my wife." And I would have had to say, if I was Big Lou at that time, cut the camera. Because what you're not gonna do is act like your wife is better than mine. And if I can't approach your wife, you can't approach mine. Period. You don't do what you don't want done to you. And Louis got really, really heated about that. And he told him, well, don't go to mine. Marsau looked a little shook in that moment, guys. I think he knew that Louis was very serious. And Marsau even hesitated for a second before he put his hand on Louis's arm. By this time, Maurice hears the commotion going on outside, and he gets up to go out there and see what's going on. And when he comes out, he tries to calm everybody down, and he said that if somebody on the street said what Tiffany said to someone and she really didn't know them, then what? Louis says she knows the person that's associated with Sheree. And he said Tiffany didn't just say it to a stranger. Marsau said, how was Tiffany right? Louis said, I didn't say she was right. And let me just cut to the chase real quick because the issue is this. And like I said, I'm tired of Marsau. Now, we all saw Marsau at Destiny's Madani relaunching. And we saw Marsau lecturing Tisha while standing outside and saying, look, don't get involved because if something happens to you, blah, 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 as your husband, I'm going to have to get involved. And here he is standing in front of Louis, puzzled as to why Louis is mad that he confronted his wife. But let me go back to the scene. Marsau said, how was she right? Louis said, I didn't say that. You want me to say that shit. But were you right? And then he pointed to Martell and asked, were you right? Marsau didn't say anything. And Martell said, yes, I was right. Louis said, look, you got a point, but were you right? Martell said, of course I was right. At this time, Big Lou gets pissed. He yells and he says, to go to my wife versus me? Martell is standing his ass there in that medium-ass trench coat, holding a cupcake, looking like a goofy, and he said, I don't have to go to you. Louis said, okay, bet. And he begins to say, when you and Mel were married, and he touches Martell's shoulder, and Martell sort of pats his hand down. And when Martell did that, it was about to be on. Louis said, look, don't go there. Don't do that. So Maurice gets in between them. Mr. Marsau is standing to the side, kind of quiet, if you ask me. And Lou let Martell know it's a respectful way of coming to him. Martell says, no, I went to her and addressed her because she was right there with him. And then Martell, in his confessional, said Tiffany was wrong, and she shouldn't have said that to Sheree. He said he and Tiffany are not friends. Big Lou is his boy, but Tiffany shouldn't have said anything, period. And then they cut back to the guys outside, and Marsau then asks Louis if they come to him with something like this, can he effectively deal with it? And Marsau likes to insult folks' intelligence because how dare you ask a man if he can handle his wife effectively? But Louis told him 100%. Maurice asked him, when you first heard it, what did you think? And he said, he told Tiffany, really, Tiff? He said they know him. And if Tiffany was wrong, she was wrong. But his principle is, if she was wrong, come holler at him. And if they were his real friends, they would have done just that and not went to his wife. He said because number one, she's pregnant, and number two, that's a female. And he said, y'all two grown men. And he basically said that Sheree is owed an apology. Marsau says, and Martell. And then Marsau had the nerve to say, and the human race, for saying it out loud. And when I tell y'all I am Marsau'd out, it's like, man, would you shut up and go get you some business, please? But the guys all make up, they shake hands, and they go back inside. By this time, this is the end, thank goodness. But Tiffany is inside saying that she's dizzy and she's not feeling well. She said that it's been a lot and she's really looking for Louis. And with them not showing too much of Tiffany at the baby shower, I was really wondering what could have happened. But I'm sure Tiffany caught wind of the disrespectful conversation at the table with the others. And then I'm sure that she was able to see Louis was outside confronting the guys. And that is a lot to deal with, especially while being pregnant. These ratchets brought this mess to that girl's baby shower, and they definitely could have waited to a later time. But anyway, Louis comes in and he asks Tiffany what's wrong. She's crying at this time. She said that she's dizzy. He asks her if she needs water, and she asked him if he could turn the lights off. Seems like to me she was having some type of panic attack or something. I'm not sure. I did hear her say something about contractions. So I'm not sure what exactly was going on with Tiffany. But that is how the episode ended. They did show a clip from next week's episode. And in that clip, everyone is gathered around Tiffany. And Big Lou ends up picking her up, carrying her out of that place to his truck. And they speed away, I'm assuming, to the hospital. So, child, that was it. In a nutshell, this was really who was a Karen, Marsau or Tiffany. And I'm going to go ahead and say both of them. And Marsau was more of a Karen than Tiffany, period. But anyway, guys, that is my recap of Love and Marriage Huntsville, Season 6, Episode 9, ready to pop off. I hope you guys enjoyed it, especially those of you that are blacking out the episodes of Love and Marriage Huntsville. So again, thank you guys for joining me. Drop down in the comments. Let's chit-chat about it. Please also make sure to like this video, hit that notification bell, and subscribe. Chat with you guys soon. Bye.